Well, hello and welcome back to our live coverage of the UN General Assembly. We're right here in New York City on the outskirts of the UNGA meetings for one of the highlights of our coverage today, which is I get to sit with Winnie Byanyima in person, actually, after so many times that we've done this by video in the last 18 months or so. And of course, Winnie is the executive director of UNAIDS, former global chief of Oxfam, and a leader on all things health and development. So first of all, welcome. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Raj. It's nice to be face to face again.
It is, right? Now, we're gonna talk today about COVID, which might sound strange since you lead UNAIDS, but of course you're a global health and development leader, and COVID is the big story of the day, and it affects everything, including the ability to do your work at UNAIDS.
Absolutely. It's disrupting the work we do on the ground to fight HIV/AIDS. It is blowing us off our targets, and everyone in the development sector is affected by COVID pandemic. But in our case, we also know so much about fighting a pandemic. We are the global program on HIV/AIDS. We fought a pandemic for 25 years. Yeah. We know what works, and we see mistakes happening.
Let's talk about those mistakes. As you assess us at this point in the pandemic, how do you assess the world's response so far?
It is disappointing. It's a failure, a failure of moral leadership. Look, you have a global pandemic, you need a global plan. A global problem needs a global plan. Up to now, we have national plans, we have leadership by different leaders giving donations here and there, but there's no global plan to solve this problem. So the first problem is lack of global solidarity, global leadership, to put in place one plan to vaccinate the whole world. We have a success in science, we succeeded to have the science. Right. Governments put down $100 billion to invest in innovation. We got the science, the vaccine, but political leadership to produce enough and distribute equitably isn't there.
And what about COVAX? What about the ACT Accelerator? I mean, aren't those the instruments that were set up exactly to make sure the vaccine gets to the lowest income countries?
Yes, indeed, they were set up for that, but it is too little and it doesn't address the real problem. The real problem is that there's now one vaccine that's needed by the whole world. There's a huge demand, global demand, and there's short supply. The governments of rich countries have allowed a handful of pharmaceutical companies to decide how much is produced, who is allowed to buy, and at what price. And it is just a handful of rich people deciding for the world whose life will be saved and who won't be saved. So they've decided to maximize profits and to let people die. And the governments of their rich countries are not reining them in, are not calling them in and leveraging the money they invested, taxpayers' money, to get them to share the technology. Indeed, you mentioned ACT Accelerator. Yeah. There is something also called the CTAP, COVID Technology Access Pool, where they're supposed to put their technology, have it licensed out to every region.
Right.
But they're not using it. They're holding on to monopolizing the knowledge and producing only what they can produce. And now we have, I think I was with the president of Spain, he said 75% of his people are vaccinated. In my country, it's less than 2%.
Of Uganda.
Yeah. That is the inequity there.
Right.
So, and that means our countries are in lockdowns all the time, in and out of lockdowns. Whenever it surges, they lock down. So economies are sinking.
Right. Oh, there's so many after effects. But there's a big debate about this point you're making, right? So some people are in your camp. I think we reported yesterday, Tom Frieden's comments, former CDC director, agrees that, there's sort of a myth that supply isn't the issue. There's going to be a glut of supply. But there are others who disagree. And in fact, say that there are doses going, but they're going too late, unpredictably, with close to the expiration date. That's what World Bank President David Malpass has said. We don't have a predictable, look at the supply when it's arriving. And so countries say, we just got 3 days notice and there's a lot of doses coming. We're not ready to receive it. Is the problem more supply, or is the problem more the distribution, the cold chain, the trained healthcare workers, the health systems in the countries? How do you see that dynamic?
The big problem today is that the supply does not meet the demand. And everything else that people are saying is, especially pharmaceutical companies, is to skirt around that question. The supply is too low. And the approach to the supply is not to increase by licensing more companies to produce. We just keep being told that there will be more donations of excess doses, or that some rich countries will buy some more doses. Hey, this is good, but it won't solve the problem of production that doesn't meet demand. It will still be waiting in line for donations to come, donations from a handful of companies that supply. So
I know Oxfam, your former organization, has said only 10% of the globally pledged doses have actually been delivered and administered so far. So
exactly, if you take COVAX, for example, I mean, we welcome COVAX. It was an initiative to help developing countries access the vaccine at low cost and to get support from grants as well. But COVAX hasn't been able to deliver to any of its targets. It is unable to, because it can't acquire enough doses.
Right, they had this plan to get many doses from the Serum Institute in India, and then India got hit with a Delta wave and said, we have to keep those vaccines. So what would be the model that works, right? I mean, I think people are grasping for what is the solution. It sounds like you're saying IP waivers, open up the intellectual property, but what else would really work here?
Well, actually, first, there are rich countries that have bought so much and have excess doses. Now we know that they are even expiring in their stores. They need to give up excess doses, and that can be immediate doses going to developing countries. Secondly, we want that those who hold the technology use the technology access pool to license under certain conditions. They don't lose profits. Under those terms, like you have for ARVs, they would be able to license companies in India, in Brazil, in South Africa, in Senegal to produce, and then we have more production in every region. So we want that licensing. But thirdly, money is important. Countries have lost their earning power. Economies have been locked down.
Sure.
They don't have enough money to roll out the vaccines. They have this debt situation hanging over them. The debt relief that was granted was so small. It's just enough to help them pay the debt repayment, but it leaves them in a situation where they don't have more to plow into the COVID problem, the health system. The SDRs, that the African share is $22 billion. That is just enough to help the countries to manage their debt situation. It doesn't, again, leave them in a situation where they are able to have the fiscal space to rise out of this problem. So we see that there are attempts to solve the finance problem, the supply problem, but they are too small to address the problem.
Does that apply to the World Bank? Do you feel like the World Bank has not stepped up to do more? Because when you say, SDRs, obviously that's IMF, but World Bank presumably would be the group to come in and provide the fiscal space to these countries?
I think that, again, the World Bank has put out some money that can be borrowed, a window for COVID. But again, what these countries need now first is a restructuring of the debt they owe, not just to the bank, but so many other lenders. So a coordinated restructuring and cancellation of debt. They need more grants. Some of the low-income countries will need more grants than borrowing to buy. But also, going back to buying the vaccine, there's total opaqueness about pricing. We find that poor countries that should be getting this at a lower price are secretly being charged sometimes a price higher than even rich countries are paying. It's very immoral what's going on. the maximization of profit, the government stepping back and not coming forward to leverage the companies and have a global plan where pricing, first of all, by having more production, prices drop down. And once prices drop down, you also go for generics and price according to markets. Today, ARVs are like that. HIV technologies, whenever there's a technology on the market, it comes with licensing for generics in the South and pricing for the same tablets in Uganda is different from the tablets in the UK.
It's a tiered pricing model, right?
Tiered pricing model. This is not a perfect system, but it has saved lives. And we can do it for COVID too. We need the political will.
So let's say we don't get many of the things you're calling for. I mean, again, there's a big debate about whether those are the right things, but let's say we just don't get them.
Yeah.
What do you think the world can do? Because it looks a lot more like we're going to be grinding out the response to this. You know, the high ambitious target is to reach 40% of the world vaccinated. Many countries like your own are at 2%, 40% by the end of this year. We're in late September. So, you know, what are some practical, realistic steps that need to be taken? I wonder, there's a UN AIDS, should there be a UN COVID? Do we need to create a new agency? And there's some debate about whether that makes sense. What do you think we ought to do in a very practical, near-term way?
No, we don't need a UN AIDS or a UN COVID.
Sure.
But we do need a global action plan. That means agreeing some targets, like let's say by mid next year, 70% of every population in every country has been vaccinated. To do that, we need production of this amount. So let's have licensing in so many regions so that there's production there. Let's put money into building capacity for R&D and manufacturing of medicines in every region. So by the time we get a next pandemic, there's capacity to produce for every region. These are things that don't need a new agency, but that need a multilateral system that works, countries, leaders believing in one approach and buying in and putting the investments there. It does not need a new institution. We have our WHO, we have the World Trade Organization. We need the intellectual property waiver. That is essential for different regions to produce for themselves.
You know, one of the rebuttals to that is even if there was a waiver, many countries, for example, maybe your own or in sub-Saharan Africa, wouldn't be ready to build the mRNA technology, the labs, the factories quickly enough to matter for this pandemic. What's your response to that?
That argument, I'm sorry to say, Raj, it is racist and it is patronizing. And it is not supported by the evidence. India is the pharmacy of the whole world. 60% of our medicines globally come from India.
The huge generic industry that's been built up there.
I was talking with the chairman of Cipla, a well-established pharmaceutical company that produces antiretrovirals. It said, the boss said to me, we just need the recipes. We need the technology, the know-how. Once we have that, we can produce it. But we don't have it. But if we have it, we can produce millions of doses, billions of doses for the world. So to say that Africa doesn't have capacity, Louis Pasteur Institute in Senegal has been producing vaccines.
Sure.
It has scientists. We have a scientific community of Africans who work in every region of the world. We can put up a capacity there can be built. Had we started that 2 years ago, we would be making this mRNA vaccine in Africa if we had committed to do it 2 years ago. The same as South Africa. There's Aspen Institute now going to do fill and finish for Pfizer. But the capacity to have the technology and actually produce is also there. So I find this quite racist. It was said many times with the HIV, antiretrovirals, capacity won't be there. They will never be. They even said those people are not going to be able to take a tablet every day for the rest of their lives. They are going to build resistance, so maybe we shouldn't give it to them. I find these arguments unfortunate. Scientific capacity is there in Latin America, in Asia, in Africa. It's a matter of sharing the technology, removing the intellectual property rules temporarily to allow different countries to produce.
We just have a few moments left, but I want to ask you, because you're here in New York, not common, not everybody's been traveling back, but you're here and you're getting to interface face-to-face with many of the world leaders and diplomats. What do you think is the kind of tone in the room? How would you describe how people are feeling about the global COVID response as you're meeting with officials from different countries and different agencies here at the UN?
Well, I see two feelings. One, many people welcomed very much President Biden's summit and his commitment to lift their donations to 1.1 billion. So there was like a ray of, well, this could be the beginning of finding a global plan and ensuring every country has access to the vaccines. Fine, a ray of hope. But on the other hand, I see some despondency that multilateralism has failed, that every country is on their own and no country can solve this on their own, that the system doesn't work. And we are in a global crisis. It's not the only one. There's a climate crisis. There are other crises, and we are unable to come together as a world and solve them. So that sense of despair, I sense it too.
Right.
But I also see some hope that, well, maybe this is the beginning of the global solution.
Yeah, I find the same thing, that people throughout this General Assembly are kind of feeling two-minded about this and thinking of Secretary Guterres' term, Secretary General Guterres saying we're at the edge of the abyss, right? This is the moment when hopefully the world will stand up. Well, I must say it's been fantastic to get to talk to you. You are always so outspoken, which is something we really appreciate. Thank you for spending some time with us today and for all you're doing at UNAIDS.
Yes, I hope the leaders who came here will listen and respond to the call by Secretary General Guterres. He spoke strong, and he called on them to come round and to the table, and I hope they will.
Thank you.
Thank you.